Hello and welcome to the Financial Wellness Hour. I am your host, Hirsch Serman, and I'm thrilled to have you and our guest on today at WGSN-DB, the Going Solo Network. This is a show for people wanting to learn more about creating financial wellness, and we're going to look at different cycles and explore them both financially and emotionally, because personal finances are usually not about the money. And I know that sounds surprising, but it's more about the emotions associated with what you're doing in your finances. And the healthier we are emotionally, the better we prepare, the better planning we do, the better decisions we make financially, emotionally, and all the way through. We might be a little general in our discussion, but we'd love to hear from you. So you can call in or you can reach me through my website, lifecycle.financial. That's lifecycle.financial, or you can post your comments on Facebook, YouTube, anywhere you might be watching us. And there's a lot of them. I think we're on about 47 platforms at this point. I do want to just throw out a quick disclaimer that every state has their own rules. So again, we might be somewhat general. Please make sure you understand what's happening in your locale. And we are in January, so Happy New Year to everybody. It also is a very unique month in the divorce world because we actually refer to it as Divorce Month, since January is the month that most divorces are initiated versus any other month in the year. And people are often emotional, they're stressed, and this is all understandable. The part that unfortunately sometimes happens is they're very concerned about what's happening right now, that they don't always focus on what's happening with their children, or how do we best go through this for the children's health and wellness. So we got a great guest today. She is a pioneer. I know you don't like when we say that, but Rosalind, you are. Rosalind Sedacca is joining me. We were talking earlier, I think this is the 4th or 5th year for Child-Centered Divorce Month. And we're going to be talking about how do we help our kids. And Rosalind is known in pretty much every circle in the divorce world as an amazingly calming manner and clarity, which is very helpful going through a divorce. But that is only a part of it. Rosalind, you have written, I cannot even imagine how many blogs and articles, books. We're going to talk about your giveaway at the end, so people should stay tuned. You're a co-parenting coach. You have your own show as well. And I believe, if I remember correctly, you're the author of a book called How Do I Tell the Kids About Divorce, which is very important. They sense things, they know something's going on. But really, how do we do it in a way that they feel safe, that they feel encouraged to be part of the family, that they know they're going to be taken care of, that they know they can still speak to us and rely on us? All these things are so important. Rosalind, it's a pleasure having you back on the show. I really appreciate that you always join me on the 1st January that we can get you in, the first week, I should say. And again, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, it's always my pleasure, Hirsch. I enjoy talking to you because I think you totally understand the dynamics of what's happening for these families. And we want to provide as much help and support as possible to make this difficult, challenging issue as smooth and easy for everyone as possible.
100%. And, I'm going to ask you, you share every year, you have such a powerful story, because when you got divorced, and if you got divorced 10 years ago versus now, the resources available are unbelievable now compared to 10 years ago. When you got divorced, there really was nothing out there, right, from resource perspective or the focus that it has up, in today's professional world. So I'm going to ask if you can share a little bit of your story, a little bit of that, like, we can do this right, do this better than most people. So I'm going to hand it over to you for a couple minutes on that, if you can.
Thank you. Thank you. And yes, this was back in the 90s, and it really was a different era. There was very little support. And I put off getting a divorce for many years, but finally I knew it was the right thing for me. And I had a son who was 11 years old at the time. And it was very challenging because my ex and I were actually making up what to do and how to co-parent together as successfully as possible. And we learned a ton, and I think we did a pretty good job. But, you feel very insecure about these things as a parent. Yeah. And one day when my son was a grown young adult in his 20s, he came to me out of the blue and he said, Ma, you and Daddy did a really good job with the divorce, and I just want to thank you. because most of my friends whose parents divorced either hate their parents or are very angry at them. And I think you guys really did a great job. And I just let out such a sigh of relief because there was a lot of guilt and insecurity on my part. And then I realized that I had learned so much about what to do and what not to do and how to avoid conflict and how to protect my son all through the different stages of his growing up, that I really had a lot that I could share with other people. And that's when I founded the Child-Centered Divorce Network, became a divorce and co-parenting coach, and started writing several books and courses and programs, because not everyone can afford one-on-one coaching. And I wanted to make sure that they had the resources available. And we are now celebrating our 20th year anniversary this January of starting Child-Centered Divorce Network.
That's incredible. 20 years of this is amazing. I can't even imagine the thousands of people that have been helped over the years. And I want to point something out, because you said your son was 11. That's when the divorce was starting. So 11, 12, 13, those are enormous years emotionally and transformative for a child. And, they are going through so much doubt on their own without anything else happening. Mm-hmm. For your child to go through that at that age and then be able to turn around and say many years later, thank you for the way you did that. I think that just in itself is such an enormous compliment, and wanted to make sure that I put that out there, because I don't really think in the years gone by that I realized your son was 11 and the age that he was. So that's enormous, really.
Well, thank you. Yes, I'm very honored. And in fact, I've spoken at several in-person divorce expos and events around the country, and he's flown into a couple of them to meet me on stage after I spoke. And then I introduced him, and he answered questions from the audience who had the mom as well as the son, who was 11 when this all happened. So he was talking from the heart about the insecurities he felt, the fears, the anxiety, and everything that is very understandable from a parent's point of view, but we don't always understand how the children are feeling. So it was a real gift to have him part of the experience, sharing from his own heart what was going on.
I got to believe it, just hearing it from, so to speak, the other perspective or the child's perspective has to be enormously impactful for that audience, because we generally think or suppose what's going on, assume something, but we don't always know. So to hear it is such a big difference. And, we are talking about January and Child-Centered Divorce Month. So why is January such an important month for divorce activity and all the rest? I mean, I have my opinions, obviously, but I'd love to hear yours.
Well, we all know that between September and December, life is crazy. There's one holiday after another, very family oriented. And a lot of people say to themselves, I'm not going to start a divorce right before Thanksgiving or before Christmas. I'm going to wait until the holiday season is over, and then we'll file, and then we'll get into that other facet of the new year and starting over again. So a lot of people just postpone from the summer on, right, and they wait till January to start the new process. And it just really builds up. Divorce attorneys are very, very busy the first few months of the new year as people start processing what they're going to do and how they're going to do it. And it becomes very intimidating at this time of year for a lot of people because they don't know. And most important is that when you have children, it's not getting through the divorce that's the most important part. It's understanding that you're going to be co-parenting, hopefully for the rest of your life, and that you and your soon-to-be ex are going to be partners in raising these children. So the divorce is just a small piece of the puzzle. Then we move on into what's going to happen now. And that's why it's so important not only to have a compassionate coach helping you, but to choose a law professional who's child-centered and focused on the family dynamic, and not just charging hourly rates and ending the divorce where you're in a worse relationship with your ex than you were when before the divorce started. That's not making a sound choice for your legal partnership. And so it's very important that you're choosing wisely. And that's why I also highly recommend mediation over litigation when it comes to divorce situations with children.
And, there's so much there. I'm going to try to remember all the thoughts I was having as you were speaking. Number one is, I think it's an important lesson that people understand. You might be in the middle of a divorce or you might be starting a divorce, but to understand that these next 2 to 3, maybe 4 months are incredibly busy because of the onslaught of filings, that sometimes you need to understand or maybe take a little bit more control of your divorce.
Yes.
In being able to reach out and engage and communicate appropriately. I'm not saying bug your attorney by any means. I'm saying appropriately, you need to communicate with that attorney. So that is one thought that I was having. The other thought is, just a couple thoughts on, new year, new life kind of thing. Or maybe you've gone through the holidays going, I could never go through another set of holidays like that, right? There's a lot of reasons, but the bottom line, I think, is, and you touched on this, I'd like to elaborate maybe with the discussion, is very often you haven't been on the same page in many things, including how do you co-parent. And so you had said about how you've got to understand that, yes, you are getting divorced, but you're never divorcing the kids because you have to co-parent and you have to always be a parent to them. I think sometimes that dynamic is misunderstood or not even aware of, that what worked in the past or what was happening in the past may not actually have worked well. And we need to be deliberate on how are we going to co-parent going forward. Even if it was working well, it's very different when you're in 2 homes or 2 settings to now also co-parent well, because there are different settings. So just throwing that out, if you have any thoughts or comments around that as well.
Yeah, so it's so important to understand there are some very huge mistakes that co-parents make that are very common, but they don't have to take place. And with sound advice, that you can avoid a lot of these mistakes. And most of it is about understanding divorce from the children's perspective. If you could look your child in the eye and talk to them, and they could share what they're feeling, it would help you make better decisions. But very often the children are too young. They certainly don't know how to express themselves. And even older kids, even teens, are confused about a lot of things. So we have to be very mindful about every decision we make, because every decision affects them emotionally, psychologically, as well as just physically. And that's the job that a divorce coach has, is to help you avoid the pitfalls. One of the biggest mistakes is fighting around your children in any way, even if you're in another room or on the phone someplace else. If the kids can hear you talking, it hurts children to hear parents fighting. It affects them emotionally and psychologically, and it changes who they are, because they're helpless to do anything about it. And you may not be aware of just the consequences of having that kind of conflict, and the energy and the tension in the home that happens as a result of that. Another thing is when we innocently and not being aware as parents, when we're putting down the other parent, because obviously when you're in a divorce situation, you may be very angry and feel so distressed about the other parent, and you let those emotions fly. You're talking to a neighbor or someone else, a friend, and you may comment, your eye rolling, your posture, your tone of voice, and comments about the other parent. But when children are exposed to hearing their other parent being disrespected or demeaned in any way, it hurts them, and again, emotionally affects them. And those are very dramatic impacts, because they love both parents in most cases, and they don't want to hear one parent putting the other parent down, even if you feel justified. And very often we do feel justified when we're having a divorce, but it's harmful for children. So we have to be able to talk to our children about the situation without maligning the other parent, and letting the children know 2 important things. One is that they have the right to love both parents, and not feel insecure and nervous about talking about the fact that they love the other parent, and also the right to be loved by both parents. Very often one parent feels justified in saying your father or your mother is not a good parent or isn't a good person, and look what they did. They had an affair, they did this and that. And that's not information that we share with our children, even teenagers, because they're not capable of fixing anything or changing anything. We don't want to get them in adult situations that are beyond their pay grade. So it's very important to be mindful about everything you say and do about the other parent, even though you're going through the divorce, even though you may feel very negative feelings about the other parent. You're doing this for the children. And when you avoid these mistakes, it gives the children the ability to adapt better to the changes, the transitions ahead, and to go on, because we want them to have their life. We want them to continue being a kid and having a child's life, and not suddenly stepping up to becoming a parent because we're getting a divorce. It's not their role to parent us. We have to always remember that we're the parent and we're a role model in these situations.
Yeah, I used to, when I went through my divorce, I used to go through to 3 different support groups. And I remember in one of them, somebody made a comment that was, I think, such a change of perspective for me. It was unbelievable. He said, I know, meaning him, I know I'm stressed, I'm angry, I'm emotional, I'm not at my best. But more than ever, I need to be at my best for my kids.
Yes.
And I thought about that, and I just was kind of blown away, because yes, they were always important, they were always a priority, but how was my actions versus my thoughts, right? Was I being the best I could? And as you said, both parents are their parents. They both have a right to love the children, and they both have a right to be loved. And so it's very easy to get caught up in the commiserating of your misery or blaming somebody else, or it's very easy to do all of that. We just got to be very, very careful how we do it, and preferably don't do it, because that just prolongs things or creates a little bit more adversity than there was, and we don't need that.
Yeah. And when you have precocious children, especially young girls who are coming into their teens, adolescence, it's very common for a child to want to protect the parents, to hug you and say, I'm going to step up and I'm going to be the man in the family. I'm going to take care of you, Mom. And children like that want to step up into parenting you. And when a parent is feeling wounded and hurt and depressed, it's so easy to allow those children to step up into those roles. And it's very, very damaging and dangerous for children. You don't want to have your children parenting you. You have to make sure you step up to being the parent, and that you're advising them, and they're not turning into your therapist. You need to turn to a professional adult for the support you need, because everyone needs support during this difficult time, but not your children, because it changes who they are and it robs them of their childhood. My own mother did that to me, and they never got a divorce, although they should have, my parents. They had a terrible marriage. They stayed together because that's what they did in that generation. But my mother would confide in me all these terrible things about my father, and you want to fix it. You want to change it as a child. But when you're 9, 10, 13, 14 years old, there's nothing you're going to do that's going to change that relationship. But it turned me into a little adult way before my time. And I pray that everyone hears this and understands that you don't want to do that. Your kids still need to step up and look up to you as the parent, and as the parent, remembering that you are a role model. So what you're doing and saying and the decisions you make are affecting your children every step of the way. So you want to make sure that before you make a decision, you think it through and you understand the consequences of that decision for the children. And when the children are taken care of and protected, you're much better able to handle the other facets of the divorce, because obviously there's financial and real estate and all kinds of other complications involved in divorce. But when your children fall through the cracks, nothing works out long term, because you're going to have a lot of problems that can be avoided. And that's my goal, is to help parents avoid those mistakes before they start, because it's much easier to move ahead in a positive way than it is to unravel those mistakes years later.
So much I want to come back to when we get back, but a quick comment that I heard a therapist once talk about that as emotional incest, when you use your child as your emotional support.
Yes.
And again, I think, we always know the physical side of that, obviously horrendous. We got to be careful on the emotional side and what that does to our children. Rosalind, how can people get in touch with you or find out more about Child-Centered Divorce Month? Then we're going to go to a break and we'll come right back.
Well, thank you, Hirsch. So year-round, you can find everything about my coaching services and all of the resources that I have available at childcentereddivorce.com, childcentereddivorce.com. And in January, in addition to that website, I have a special resource that's available where I'm giving away a free 6-part video series that I just created brand new. That's a $300 value that I'm giving away in January only. And you could find that at childcentereddivorce.com/CCD month. childcentereddivorce.com/CCD month. And in addition to the video series, I'm going to also feature several interviews I'm doing with divorce experts, because it's so important for parents to have the resources that they need so that they can make the decisions that are in the best interest of everyone in the family. And that's the way to have a child-centered divorce.
I really encourage everyone to go to childcentereddivorce.com. And you can reach me through my website, lifecycle.financial, and we will be right back. Hello and welcome back to WGSN-DB, the Going Solo Network. We have Rosalind Sedacca today, one of my favorite in co-parenting, in child support, I'm going to put it, in divorce coaching, just has had enormous experience and has impacted so many other divorce professionals. Spoke to actually over the last couple of months, a few, and I always mention when it's coming to January that I'm having you on, and you've got a lot of raving fans out there. I will tell you that. Also, one thing I don't think I said at the beginning, but effectively, I always look at Rosalind as the voice of a child-centered divorce. I think she has always been the proponent, she's been the pioneer, and has really driven the message home to so many people. I'm going to recap some of what we spoke about. There's no way I captured it all. We're going through it. But you shared your story, which I always find very, very powerful. We spoke about January being the highest number of divorce filings and why, many different reasons. We spoke about what is a child-centered divorce. The children are often, they think maybe that they are the cause. We didn't speak about that directly, and I'm sure we will, but that's another thing that you got to be so careful about with your children, is not having them think the parents are breaking up because of you. We spoke about the kids and needing structure and security, and you spoke about often when a parent kind of falls back and the kid becomes the parent. That is actually a very dangerous, in my opinion, dangerous dynamic, because what happens after the divorce? Now you've got to become the parent again. That's like weird. But what is it doing for the child? And are they going to resent you and having to play that role? So many different things that could come out of that, as well as talking about communication, the appropriateness, not arguing in front of each other or in front of the kids, having civil discussions. The more you argue, the worse it's going to be. That just results in a lot of issues, not just financially, but emotionally, going forward, cooperating, co-parenting so much. And I think that covers most. I don't think it covered all, but there are many considerations. We've discussed this, obviously. You have to think about a lot of things, contemplating your divorce and going through your divorce. And as I said, we don't want the children to think they are the cause. They can sense when something changes and there's stress, and they sense that something's not going wrong. So I would throw it out. What is important for parents to know and understand before kind of breaking the news to the children that there's going to be a divorce?
So the most important thing is that the more life it can remain as similar as it was before the divorce, the easier it is for children to get through the transition. So obviously there's going to be changes, and in most cases, one or both parents are moving to a different residence and that kind of thing, and kids are moving from home to home, and that's very common. So those are big changes and dramatic changes. If they move to another state or another area where the parents are not near each other, that makes it even more complicated. But those are the kinds of things that can happen. But when it comes to parenting decisions, the more both co-parents are talking to each other and making those decisions together still, the easier it is for the children. So when your child is at your house and says, "Hey, Ma, I want to do such and such next Tuesday with my friend Susan," and you have to make a decision, a yes or no about that. If it's not a very basic thing, it's much easier to say, I'm going to have to think about that. I'm going to talk to your dad and I'll get back to you. As soon as one parent says, hold on, I'm going to think about that and talk to your other parent and we'll get back to you, that brings both parents together, even though they're living in different homes and have different lives going on in many levels, they're still your parents. And the kids accept the decision much more easily. Children will very much want to sabotage things and take the power, especially in situations like a divorce. And so if they play one parent against the other, Mom said I could do that, now Dad's saying something different, then you're getting problems and behavior issues start. So if you two in your co-parenting can talk and make big decisions together, your children will get along much easier and adapt much more easily because they have the relief of knowing I still have two parents. My two parents are still in my life. They still love me. Doesn't matter where they're living. They're making those decisions together, even if one parent is at a distance on the phone. And so that's the biggest picture is to get parents together. And a big question to ask yourself is, when a parenting decision comes up, if you're making a decision and you're changing the decision that you would have made, if you would have said yes, but now you're saying no because it's going to irk your ex, it's going to hit them in a way and use your power against them, then you're off kilter, you're off course. You want to be making the same parenting decisions that you used to make when you were together. And that's what the kids are used to hearing. And that's how your life can move on much more simply. I know from years of client experience that some people's divorces are very smooth. The transition is smooth and the kids accept all the shifts and changes because the parents are working together on some level. You're not going to be making every decision together. You're not going to agree about every decision. We know that. And you want to learn conflict resolution skills so that you can handle that. But the more you are parenting as a unit, the easier it is for the children and the less problems you'll have from the children emotionally and psychologically.
So I'm going to repeat a few things. I tell almost every client of mine, this is an opportunity, even though they don't necessarily want this opportunity. It really is an amazing opportunity to be a role model for your children, how to deal with adversity. And I think that in itself is enormous. The one thing I just want to elaborate maybe on something you said is when you break it to the children, it should be age appropriate. A kid who's 4 versus 14 doesn't get it in the same way. And so I think the way you deliver that and the age appropriateness of how you talk to them, I think is very, very important. Now you've got a co-parent from afar, as you said, that has increasing challenges. But again, the deliberate way of going through your divorce can help you with that significantly. And then the last one I would just throw in, you didn't necessarily say this, but I'm going to plug it anyway. I think bringing the child-centered approach into your process as early as possible is going to be very, very important for your children as they go through it. We are unfortunately like really running out of time. I'm going to ask you to leave maybe 1 or 2 tips on improving co-parenting success if you have that. And then if there's anything we didn't talk about relating to the website or what you do for Child-Centered Divorce Month, let's touch on that. And then we really do have to wrap up.
Well, we want to make sure that not only do we have an age-appropriate conversation, but we touch on the fact that this is about change and not about blame. So when we're having that conversation, and I highly believe that both parents should be together in the conversation, I suggest creating an actual storybook with family photos for the younger children. It's especially helpful. But you want to touch on the fact that this is not a punishment for anyone, and that we are still your parents, and you are still loved and always will be loved by both of us. And life is going to go on, so we can accept changes in life. We change grades in school, we change hairstyles and clothing and sports. This is a change in the form of our family, but we are still a family. When children get the security of knowing we are still a family, that gives them the ability to move on in their life and still have a childhood. And that's the gift we want to make sure that they get. And so we want to remember we're role models, and it's not what we say, it's what we do that the children are learning from. It's never too late to say, I'm sorry, to look your child in the eyes and say, you know, I made a mistake. I didn't realize such and such, but I apologize, and we're going to do things differently now. So it's never too late to shift or change anything you've done. And it gives your children permission to do that as well. And they will thank you for these changes and decisions that you're making when they're grown adults. And that's the greatest gift you could have in life, is for your kids to thank you for the way you handled such a difficult situation.
Absolutely, I agree. Once more, can you share the website and your free gift that you're giving people? And I encourage people, everyone, to take care of it. Even if you only listen to 1 or 2 of the modules, Rosalind has such an amazing delivery of information, insight into things. I would recommend everyone go say right after they listen to this. But Rosalind, share if you would.
Thank you, Hirsch. Yes, so January is Child-Centered Divorce Month. And for that reason, we have a special gift for everyone. And if you go to this website, childcentereddivorce.com/CCD month, you will get access to my brand new six episode video series that covers all of the topics we've been talking about and more, dating after divorce as well, and lots of other topics. There's 6 separate videos, and this is a $300 package that I'm giving away for free in January as a launch gift for you. I also will have several other interviews with divorce experts on different facets of a child-centered divorce, and everything is free. So you get it all at childcentereddivorce.com/CCD month. So take advantage in January, and year round, you can go to childcentereddivorce.com.
I would encourage everyone to go childcentereddivorce.com/CCD month. After you download that and look at everything, go to the main page, childcentereddivorce.com. I'm telling you, there's no doubt there's going to be very valuable information. There are tons of people that share stuff on there with free giveaways. Rosalind, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to have you on the show. Silverio, behind the scenes, I appreciate all that you're doing to make it so easy that we totally lost track of time. And I appreciate everything. I appreciate you listening, and a happy new year. And again, congratulations, Rosalind, on 20 years. That's amazing. I am Hirsch Serman. You can reach me through my website, lifecycle.financial. That's lifecycle.financial. And I appreciate everyone tuning in. Have a great day.